Today in the news on Vanguard Live, my name is Damlola Ogunshaki. Let's move straight to the front pages of the dailies. I'm starting with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with fresh inflation fears as top firms lose 656 billion naira to forex woes. In leading quoted companies rise 709% to 656 billion naira. All sectors in excesses of 3 trillion naira. They will transfer losses to consumers. That's coming from analysts. Says this may stoke next round of inflation. You can see that's on page 19 of Vanguard newspaper. Now on page 9, we have fee. Varsities in desperate situation, difficult to retain old rates. PEPT must explain Tinubu's imprint on judgment. That's coming from Labour Party. And we have a photo story here with a writer that says President Bola Ahmed Tinubu with President of the Republic of Korea, Yoon Suk Yeol, during a G20 summit of world leaders in New Delhi, India last Saturday. Now on page 9, United Nigeria Airlines get approval for direct flight to United States of America, Europe, and Middle East. And on page 8, Morocco quake. Rescuers comb rubble for survivors as death toll hits 2,122. And there's a quote from Owe Lakenfa. You can see that on page 16. Now on sports, on page 29, Nigeria 6-0 Sao Tome. And Osimhen scores hat-trick as Eagles tomb Sao Tome. Stories above on page 9, why Nigeria should be included in G20. Foreign Minister. Anguish, chaos, gridlock over relocation of airlines. Lastly, on Vanguard newspaper, we have controversy trails a sales of any onshore oil asset to handle. You can see that on page 21. Now, The Guardian. Guardian is leading with falling consumption, weak sales threaten FMCG businesses and jobs. You can see that on page 6. On page 6, still, Labour Party seeks clarity from PEPT over judgment copies issued to APC. Christian Association of Nigeria, Catholic bishops decry worsening hardship in Nigeria. Forget bailouts, pay living wage. NLC tells government, you can see that on page 5, how endless internal roles diminish status of once revered MBA. You can see that on page 4. Now, away from the Guardian newspaper, we move to the Punch. Punch is leading with National Assembly polls, tribunals to decide 400 cases and sittings. 7 Delta reps, others to no fate this week. Tribunals sack a Kano NNPP lawmaker, Imo PDP rep. Plateau governor gets verdict today as tribunals decide poll petitions in more states. You can see that on page 2. NDLEA seizes 399 explosives, illicit drugs, grandma, others arrested. Ogun, ex-governor Daniel's wife clash over plaza demolition. Stories above states get 1.51 trillion naira FAAC allocation in 6-1. That's coming from NEIT. You can see that on page 19. And lastly, on the Punch newspaper, banks' bad loans eat 478 billion naira amid economic downturn. That can be seen on page 19. Lastly, let's look at the Nation. Nation is leading with Tinubu strikes multiple deals with Germany, Korea, India. World leaders pledge more interest in agriculture, fintech, education, defense. President in UAE to dissolve bilateral disagreements. You can see that story on page 4. Eagle swallow by Sao Tome 6-0. Stories above acquisition of bank CBN Deputy Governor quizzed. British worship in Lagos. You can see that on page 8. Federal roads collapse across states. Vice President directs urgent action on Jalingo Yola Road. Governor seek Bumai's quick intervention. Lastly, on the Nation newspaper, President fair to Igbo with appointment, says Soludo. You can see that on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. And that's all we have on the front pages of the dailies this morning. Join us after the break for the analysis. Welcome back. This is Today in the News on Vanguard Life. My name is Damlola Ogunshaki. And joining me to analyze the front pages of the dailies this morning is Mr. Aliu Mohammed. He is the CEO of Magnet Communications, former editor of Daily Times and Concord newspaper. Good morning, Mr.
Good
Ali.
morning, Damilola. How are you?
I'm very fine, thank you. Now let's move straight to the front pages of the dailies, and we're starting with that of the forex. And many of Nigeria's big companies across various sectors of the economy may be gasping for breath following the sustained scarcity of foreign exchange resources, and this also comes at the backdrop of a sharp rise in exchange rates in the later part of the second quarter of 2023, that's this year. What do you have to say about this?
Well, like I keep saying, it is time we expand the scope of our foreign exchange earning. As at today, as a nation, the only major product that we have for exportation is oil. And that is after more than 40% of the total product will have been stolen on the high seas. And then a lot of factories, foreign companies depend on the dollar to do their business. It is sad that we have dollarized our economy when our source of earning in Nigeria is naira. When a country decides to spend dollars instead of its currency, this is the kind of problems that you get. Even some part of government budgets are estimated in dollars. That is sad. It is very, very sad. Let us start from foreign companies that are operating here that would need to transfer tranches of dollars back to their home countries. We must find a way of ensuring that in the process of transporting or transferring whatever they have made here in dollars, our economy is not affected by it. Take, for instance, the assessment of the sale of crude oil is done in dollars. And crude oil is the only product that we export. And a large chunk of the products, the crude oil, is stolen on the high sea. How do you expect to earn dollars? What happened to the arrangement which China had with Nigeria, that if you are going to China, you can spend naira there in China? If you or me are going to China, we are free to spend naira in China, while Chinese can also spend their currency in Nigeria. What happened to that? But as at today, it is not being implemented. What people do is to start looking for dollars when they are going to China. I wonder what happened to that arrangement. We can make similar arrangements with other countries that spend dollars. Take naira in place of dollars. We can do it. It is possible. If we are able to broker that kind of arrangement with most countries, we would be able to grow our economy to a level that it will be less dependent on the exchange rate in terms of dollars. Some government agencies too, like I said, budget whatever they want to do in terms of dollars. They will tell you that a road contract is worth $50 billion. They will now look at the current exchange rates and do that budget, exchange that budget into naira. It runs into billions. That is what happened in the case of the FCT budget that Wike was complaining about just last weekend. Because what I heard is that all the estimates were done in dollars. So when you exchange the total cost to naira, then you have billions. So for as long as we continue to assess and implement our policies in dollars, we continue to have this crisis. And most factories will continue to run at a lesser rate than they should have if their operations is based on the local currency in Nigeria. I have heard from the grapevine that government is planning a policy program that will ensure that the naira becomes stronger between now and the end of the year. I hope that will be done quickly, and so that we can at least boost the industrial sector in the country.
The five justices of the Election Petition Tribunal unanimously dismissed the petition.
Yes.
That was on September 6th,
Yes.
last week. Now, what do you think about the judgment?
It's a landmark judgment. For once, we have the entire members of the tribunal coming together to dismiss a case involving some parties who went to court against the party that won. In the past, we've had situations where you have dissenting judgments within the same tribunal. Either 2 or 3 of the judges will say, no, this is our own judgment. But they were unanimous this time. It took over 14 hours to read that judgment. It's a landmark judgment. I wonder if it is true that the 2 major parties that filed the petition didn't provide enough evidence to back up their claims. If you don't have evidence, how do you win a case? It is impossible. You are alleging rigging, massive rigging in an election, and you are asking the court to declare you winner in that same election that you claim to have been rigged. Is that possible? So I commend the justices, the 5 judges of the Election Petition Tribunal. Of course, there is a step further for the 2 parties to go. They can go to the Supreme Court. They don't have to resort to the kind of blackmailing that is going on about the judgment that was printed by APC, which had their official logo on it or official name on it. That's what they are resorting to now. We should all look at this judgment in its entirety and stop all this distraction that is being brought up because of some imprints.
All right. Based on the Archbishop, they reacted to this, said that despite billions of naira of taxpayers' money that appropriated for the provision of the beavers, that INEC is not, that it's wrong to expect INEC to make use of this. So they are saying that as much as they respect the views of the courts, that as this case moves to the next level, the fate of the country continues to hang in the balance, and the future of democracy in our land, stands on the edge of a precipice. Now, so what do you think about what the Catholic bishops are saying?
You see, INEC is the umpire. INEC is the body that came out with the electoral laws. The electoral laws were not enacted. I mean, the rules and regulations governing the elections were not enacted by the legislature. They came up with the rules guarding the elections that they conducted. If you listen to the judgment of the Electoral Petition Tribunal, that INEC is not duty bound to transmit election results through a particular mode. Yes, they said it, and they came out to say that that mode was threatened because the other parties brought in hackers to hack into INEC websites and stuff it with fake results. And if you observe, it took almost 24 or 48 hours to declare the final results of that election, because they were trying to avoid a situation where these so-called imported hackers will have access to INEC website and pass fake results there. And those results were already in circulation. If you remember, those results were already in circulation. We had more than 3 different presidential results before INEC came up with the final result. So if there was a reason for them to change the mood, it is their right to do it. That's what the court said.
But some of
Not
the
me.
things that put was going to work, in favor of these parties that took the case to the court was, the issue of the president's certificate and the drug allegations.
Unfortunately, they didn't look at that. Don't forget that the certificate issue is still on in the US. Whether he graduated from University of Chicago or not, that other case is still going on in the US. I am sure that is why the tribunal cleverly avoided it. I am sure, I'm not a lawyer, but I am sure that because that case is going on, the former Vice President, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, is pursuing a case on the certificates of the President, Alhaji Bola Tinubu. So you can, from the layman's opinion, you can assume that because it is in courts over there, the tribunal cleverly avoided it. But like I said, it is a case that can be raised in their appeal before the Supreme Court. Fortunately, they have an opportunity to appeal. If you say that the electoral tribunal is partial, we have a higher court. There is no reason why people should be bitter that the tribunal delivered a bad judgment when you have, is not that the tribunal is not the final court to adjudicate in that case. We still have a Supreme Court. So people should relax. If you think the tribunal is partial, go to the Supreme Court. All this bitterness, all this throwing of stones against one another, to me, is unnecessary. When the law prescribes that you can appeal, you can appeal. That is the beauty of the law.
Okay, let's move away from that and talk about the universities. Last week, some students protested in front of UNILAG school gate, and that's because their fees was increased by over 800%. Now, the vice chancellor of the university has said that universities in the country, that they are in desperate situations regarding the pressure to produce quality graduates, and that reducing the fees might not be possible because of the budget they have on ground.
Like I keep saying, once you have a crisis at a particular sector, especially the downstream sector of the oil industry in Nigeria, you have a spiral effect on everything. Prices of petrol has gone up like how many times? Twice since the inception of this government. And to have a spiral effect on other activities, socially, educationally, industrially, it will have effects, and those are the effects that we are seeing. You know what it costs to buy a bag of rice now? Over 50,000, almost 50,000. Some brands are over 50,000. And so it is not unexpected. To me, we have to sit down as a nation and decide whether we want quality graduates or we want graduates that will end up roaming the streets without jobs, because the foundation for candidates, good candidates that would come out and become good employees in future, is in the university. If the university is incapable of producing quality graduates, then the nation is in crisis in terms of human resources. Because you see, apart from the fact that they are lecturing, there are things that are needed in those universities: hostels, feeding, light, water. If you look at all these amenities, it is difficult to get them as an individual outside the campus. You know how much they pay for NEPA, 1 unit of NEPA meter now. If you buy 20,000 today, in 2 3 weeks it is gone. You have to be looking for money to buy another one. So you can now imagine a school that have big hostels, giant hostels, how much they will be spending on electricity alone. It is crazy.
Well, you study this. This is a federal university, and the money was increased by over 800%.
But are they getting the grants that they are supposed to get?
Some of the students are also training themselves in university. I mean, watch the video of a boy that was saying that, he said his friends, there's a friend selling in the Yaba, selling granules in Yaba. Are you supposed to afford over 200,000?
I sympathize with them. I have gone through this system before. In our time, we had access to good food, 25 kobo. Morning, afternoon, evening, 75 kobo. That was what we had when we were in the university. But today, to feed one student is a lot of money. The issue is government giving out the grants that they are supposed to give to universities? We must answer that question. Because if government is not giving the grants, a lot of universities now have gone commercial. They produce water, they rent out their halls, they do a lot of things to make money to augment what they get from the government. So we must sit down and find out whether the government gives the allocation due to the universities. So when we are able to confirm that government is playing its role in terms of the release of funds, then all other things will be simpler than we had thought, because what you need is to augment what government gives to you. But ordinarily, education is one sector that is supposed to be cheap, because you are grooming leaders for the nation. They are grooming future workers for the country. They are grooming those who will take over from the present crop of leaders for the nation. So I sympathize with the students, but government should do something urgent about it, because there is no point being in school and you cannot eat. The Yorubas say that when you are hungry, nothing enters your brain. Nothing will enter your brain. Even if you have been listening to a lecture and you know that you are not stable in terms of what is inside you, you are just there for nothing. Your mind will not be there, but you might be physically there. So we must ensure that all these universities are well taken care of in terms of funding, and let us take note that our leaders of tomorrow are being groomed in those institutions. Let the government play its role, and the universities themselves should enlarge their areas of revenue generation so that they can survive on their, because there is no amount the government will give to universities now that will be enough. So that is why you are hearing about increment in school fees. But honestly, 800% is too high. No matter how bad the situation is, it is too high.
All right, lastly, I just wanted to quickly talk on this one, and that the 55-member bloc of our African Union joined the European Union as only the second regional organization to become a permanent member of the G20. What's your take on this?
It's a good development. You see, G20 members should not be just the European nations and other superpower nations. Africa should have a voice there. It's a good development as far as I'm concerned. It's a good development. Our voice must be heard in the Committee of Nations all over the world. So it is a way of letting the European nations know that Africans have a voice. and we have come of age as Africans to be part of that group. So I am sure that African leaders will sustain what they have started now by ensuring that they contribute positively to issues concerning other parts of the world. So it's a good development. Like I said, we hope that we will sustain our membership of the group to the best of our ability as Africans.
All right, lastly, let's end this on a lighter note this morning with Mr. and Mrs. And the first person speaking this morning is Mrs. Mrs. says, you fooled me with the phrase, God loves you. When we were growing up, in fact, my dad fell for it too, until you whispered to me that you would like to copy God.
To love her.
Yes. And Mr. replied, well, since he created us in his image, we should do things his way.
His way, yeah, I like that. It's a good way of toasting the woman.
And she said that daddy who fell for it.
Yes, the father must be a stubborn father anyway. So the young man devised his own means of convincing the father that he loved his daughter. So it's acceptable. Henceforth, if you see that a lady is finding it difficult to accept your proposals, tell that lady that God loves her. And you are representing God there.
I know women want God-fearing men, so I guess this is going to work. Thank you, sir, for joining us this morning.
You're always welcome.
Yes, and that's Mr. Liu Mohammed. He's the CEO of Magnet Communications, former editor of Daily Times and Concord newspaper. He just reviewed and analyzed some of the stories on the front pages with us this morning. Now, to get more of our top stories, you can follow us on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. On Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, our WhatsApp number is also displayed on your screen. My name is Dablola Okunshakin. Have a lovely morning.